"We have nowhere left to go," Maria whispered, hugging her children as the biting wind whistled through the crevices of the gigantic abandoned grain silo. That rusty metal cylinder, a tomb for forgotten harvests, was now the only roof they had left in the world. Every creak of the structure echoed the despair in her chest. But the determination to protect her little ones was a fire that would not be extinguished. With calloused hands, she began to clear away decades of dust when a strange glint caught her eye, hidden beneath a layer of dirt and concrete. And what she was about to unearth would change not only their lives, but the fate of an entire generation. Maria knelt, her breath caught in her throat. The glint, barely perceptible, came from something buried beneath the layer of hard-packed earth and gravel that covered the silo floor, where she planned to lay new flooring. Her children, Pedro and Ana, 6 and 4 years old respectively, watched her with curious eyes, nestled together, trying to shield themselves from the cold that pierced the metal walls. "What is it, Mommy?" Pedro asked, his voice tiny. Maria shook her head, a knot of hope and fear tightening in her chest. With trembling hands, she began to scrape away the dirt with her fingertips. The glint intensified, revealing a dark, oxidized surface, something larger, more solid. Maria's heart pounded, her eyes scanned the ground for a tool. She found a sturdy piece of wood, an old handle. With it, she began to dig with more vigor, the dry, compacted earth slowly yielding. The effort was great, and the cold seemed to bite even harder at her unprotected hands. But curiosity and a faint flame of hope propelled her. After a few minutes that felt like hours, the improvised shovel hit something with a dull thud, an unmistakable metallic sound. There it was, an old, rusty box, carefully hidden, heavy, embedded in the earth as if it had been part of the floor itself for decades. Its rectangular shape, the edges corroded by time, the metal handle almost disintegrated. Maria felt a shiver down her spine. Who could have hidden it there? And why? With Pedro's help, who pulled small stones, Maria managed to unearth the box. It was larger than she had imagined, about 1/2 meter long, and very heavy. The metal, once shiny, now displayed a patina of rust and dirt. She dragged it to a corner less exposed to the wind, where her children waited, their faces anxious. "What's inside, Mommy?" Ana asked, her eyes wide. Maria smiled, a faint smile, but full of a new and strange emotion. "I don't know, my loves, but we'll find out together." The lid was stuck, seized by rust. Maria tried to force it with the wooden handle, but the metal yielded only slightly, letting out a metallic groan. She searched for a sharper stone, a pointed piece of concrete, and carefully began to hammer the edges of the lid. Each strike was a dry sound that echoed in the emptiness of the silo, and each echo carried with it the promise of a mystery about to be revealed. The children shrank back a little, but their eyes never left their mother. That moment somehow united them even more, a small family against the world, about to unravel a secret. Finally, with a loud crack and a sharp screech, the lid gave way. Maria took a deep breath, her heart pounding. Slowly she lifted the rusty lid. The faint light, filtering through the silo's crevices, danced over the contents, and what Maria saw made her jaw drop. There were no grains, no old papers. There was a gleam, much more intense and true than what had guided her. Inside the box, carefully arranged on an old faded fabric, were piles of sparkling jewels. Pearl necklaces, rings with precious stones that seemed to wink, gold and silver brooches, and just beneath them, solid gold bars, stacked, heavy and unmistakable. Maria brought her hands to her mouth, her eyes welling up. It was a fortune, an unimaginable fortune, forgotten for decades. The cold and misery of the silo vanished for an instant, replaced by a sudden warmth of hope and disbelief. Pedro and Ana, seeing the gleam and wonder in their mother's eyes, approached, their small hands pointing at the shining objects. "Look, Mommy, how beautiful!" Anna exclaimed, reaching out her tiny hand to touch a necklace. Maria hugged them tightly, tears streaming down her face. The silo, once a symbol of despair, had revealed its secret, and with it, the promise of a future she had never dared to dream of. Poetic justice was beginning to manifest in that inhospitable place, transforming the refuge of despair into an empire of hope. Maria clutched her children close, warm tears streaming down her face, mixing with dust and sweat. They were not tears of despair, but of a relief so profound it almost choked her. Pedro and Anna, still too young to grasp the magnitude of what they saw, laughed, reaching out their hands for the jewels that sparkled in the box. "It shines, Mommy," Pedro exclaimed, his eyes wide, while Anna tried to grab a pearl necklace, fascinated by its soft glow. Maria smiled through her tears, a smile she hadn't given in a long time, feeling the weight of that treasure not as a burden, but as an anchor of hope. Reality, however, soon set in. The biting cold of the silo, forgotten for a moment, returned to nip at them. The faint twilight barely illuminated the interior of the structure, and the vulnerability of that inhospitable place seemed even more pronounced with the presence of such a valuable fortune. Maria knew she couldn't leave the box there, exposed. Her eyes scanned the surroundings, searching for a safe hiding place. The silo was vast, but every corner seemed to echo loneliness and lack of privacy. She had to act cautiously. The wisdom life had imposed on her dictated that discretion was now her greatest ally. With almost reverent care, Maria closed the lid of the box, the metallic creak sounding like a secret being kept. She dragged it back to the hole from which she had unearthed it, covering it with earth and gravel, trying to disguise any sign of its existence. It wasn't a permanent hiding place, but it would serve for now. Maria's heart pounded, no longer from fear, but from an immense responsibility. That treasure was not just for her. It was for her children's future, for the dignity that had been stolen from them. That night, Maria's sleep was restless. She lay between Pedro and Anna, feeling the warmth of their small bodies, but her mind buzzed with plans and worries. How to transform that cold metal into something that would bring them warmth and security. How to use the treasure without attracting the attention of those who had judged and scorned them. The society that saw them as crazy for living in a silo would never accept the idea that a fortune was hidden there. Prejudice was a wall as high as the metal walls that surrounded them. In the morning, the first thing Maria did was unearth the box again, just to confirm it wasn't a dream. The gleam of the jewels and the weight of the gold were real. She took a small, discreet gold ring and hid it in the pocket of her shabby dress. It was a risky step, but necessary. She needed food, blankets, tools to begin transforming the silo into a real home. The harsh winter was lurking, and with each passing day, the cold intensified, reminding her of the urgency of her mission. With the ring well guarded, Maria decided that the first priority was food and warmth. They could no longer depend on occasional charity or scavenging for scraps. Her children deserved more. She explained to Pedro and Anna that they would be out for a while, but would return soon. The little ones, accustomed to a routine of uncertainties, simply nodded, trusting in their mother's strength and determination. Maria's gaze at the silo before leaving was different. It was no longer one of despair, but of a silent promise. That place, once a monument to failure, was about to become the foundation of a new beginning, an empire of hope built on resilience and maternal love. Poetic justice was just beginning to unfold its threads, and Maria felt in every fiber of her being that destiny held something grand in store for them. Maria clutched the gold ring in her dress pocket, feeling the cold metal against her skin. The wind outside was a relentless whip, and each step in the crunching snow was a reminder of the urgency of her mission. The small town, a few kilometers away, seemed like an oasis of warmth and life, but Maria knew that for her it was a minefield of curious glances and silent judgments. Her head held high, shoulders tense. She walked with the dignity life had taught her to preserve, even when everything seemed to collapse. The thought of Pedro and Ana, alone in the silo, was the fuel that propelled her. Upon reaching the main street, the bustle of the town enveloped her. Women with shopping baskets, men hurrying about their business. No one recognized her, or pretended not to. Maria felt the sideways glances, the muffled whispers. "It's that widow who lives in the silo," she heard in her mind, the same phrase that had haunted her since the eviction. She ignored it, focusing on the small jewelry shop at the end of the street. A modest establishment, but one that seemed to be her only hope. With her heart pounding, Maria pushed open the wooden door, making the bell above it tinkle. A man with glasses perched on his nose, with grey hair and a leather apron, looked up from his workbench. It was Mr. Elias, known for his honesty, but also for his discretion. "May I help you, madam?" he asked, his voice somewhat dry. Maria extended her hand, revealing the gold ring. I'd like to sell it," she said, her voice almost a whisper. Mr. Elias took the ring, examining it with a magnifying glass. His eyes widened slightly, and he cast a quick glance at Maria, who tried to remain calm. "This is not an ordinary ring, madam," he murmured, his tone now softer, almost respectful. "It's gold of excellent quality and the cut, ancient but impeccable." He hesitated, and Maria felt a knot in her throat. "Where did you get it?" Maria took a deep breath. "It's a family heirloom, Mr. Elias. I urgently need the money." He observed her for a moment, as if trying to read her soul. The honesty in her eyes, the determination in her posture, seemed to convince him. After a brief negotiation, Mr. Elias offered a fair price, perhaps even a little more than Maria expected, moved by a discreet compassion. With the money in hand, Maria felt a weight lifted from her shoulders. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough for the essentials. She bought fresh bread, cheese, some fruit, and most importantly, thick blankets, a sturdy tarp to cover the silo's crevices, and some basic tools. A hammer, nails, and a real shovel. Each item was a step towards dignity. The return to the silo was lighter, despite the weight of the bags. The cold was still biting, but hope warmed her chest. Spotting the metal structure, Maria saw Pedro and Ana at the entrance, waving frantically. Their faces lit up at the sight of her. "Mummy, you're back!" Ana exclaimed, running to hug her. Maria hugged them tightly, tears of relief mingling with joy. Inside the silo, Maria began to work immediately. With the tarp and nails, she covered the larger crevices, reducing the flow of icy wind. The blankets were spread on the hard-packed earth floor, creating a small, soft refuge. Pedro and Ana helped, extending their small hands to feel the softness of the new fabrics. The smell of fresh bread filled the air, and the first warm meal that day was savored with immense gratitude. The silo, little by little, ceased to be a place of desolation to become a home, a sanctuary of hope and resilience, built with a mother's love and the promise of a future that now seemed possible. With crevices covered and blankets on the floor, the silo became a refuge. The wind hummed, but Maria watched Pedro and Ana nestled together, their faces rosy, eyes shining. Fresh bread and a faint warmth created coziness. She felt relief, an oasis of peace amidst her worries. That night, while her children slept, Maria did not rest. Her mind buzzed. The treasure, still hidden, was both a promise and a burden. How to transform it into a dignified life without attracting greed or judgment. Mr. Elias had noticed the ring. Selling more jewels in town was risky. A larger plan was essential. The following days were filled with hard work. With the new shovel, Maria leveled the floor, removing stones and earth. Pedro helped carry debris. Ana gathered branches. Together they transformed the space. Maria used tools to fix boards, creating a raised sleeping platform, protecting them from the cold. The silo, once empty, came to life. The children's voices, once whispers, now echoed with laughter. Maria, watching them play, felt her heart warm. Every advancement was a brick in the construction of a new home, both physical and emotional. That place, once seen as a shame, became a sanctuary of love and resilience. But winter offered no respite. Snow fell, covering the silo, and the cold intensified. Maria needed more resources: heating, warm clothes, nutritious food. The ring had been a start, but the treasure was vast, and the responsibility weighed heavily. Selling more jewels would be risky. Suspicious questions and glances awaited her. One night, the wind howled. Maria looked at the treasure. An idea germinated. What if she didn't sell the jewels, but used them in another way? What if their value benefited not only her and her children, but also others who faced indifference and prejudice? The poetic justice of the silo could extend. It was an audacious thought, but her courage had never been small. She recalled her husband's stories about neighboring farmers with contacts in larger cities. There was a way to reach these contacts, exchanging part of the treasure for resources discreetly and safely. It wouldn't be easy, requiring trust and a dangerous journey, but the idea of a broad, impactful future lit a new flame in her heart. Maria knew, first, consolidate the home in the silo. She needed a solid foundation. With the shovel, she dug, not for the treasure, but for the foundations of the sleeping platform and a pit for the fire that would warm her children. Every movement was an act of love and overcoming, transforming the cold metal into a refuge of warmth and hope. The silo, once a witness to despair, now heard the whispers of her plans and the promise of an empire of altruism. Maria, shovel in hand, felt the cold of the damp earth penetrate her improvised gloves, but the image of Pedro and Ana sleeping on a raised surface away from the icy ground was an unwavering engine. Every blow of the tool on the compacted soil was an act of love, an invisible brick in the construction of what would be their true home. She dug the foundations for the sleeping platform, and beside it, a pit for the fire, which promised warmth and life. The silo, once an empty echo, began to vibrate with the energy of her determination. Days turned into a strenuous but gratifying routine. Pedro, at 6 years old, carried small pieces of wood and stones, imitating his mother with a touching seriousness. Ana, the youngest, gathered dry branches, her eyes shining as she imagined the flames dancing in the pit. Together, they transformed the interior of the metal cylinder. Maria, with the tarp and blankets, created rudimentary partitions, separating the sleeping area from what would be the small living area. The smell of wet earth mingled with that of freshly cut wood, an aroma of progress. The sleeping platform, made with boards found nearby and fixed with crooked nails and firm hammer blows, was a triumph. When the children lay there for the first time, wrapped in soft blankets, their tired smiles were Maria's greatest reward. The silo, once a symbol of her misery, was now a fortress against the implacable winter. Its metal walls, once cold and impersonal, now embraced them with a promise of security. But Maria's mind did not rest. The treasure, carefully buried beneath the platform, was a constant presence, a heavy and glittering secret. She knew that selling a single ring had been a calculated risk, but selling more jewels in the small town would be like lighting a beacon in the darkness, attracting glances and questions she couldn't answer. The prejudice of society, which saw them as crazy for living in the silo, was an obstacle as real as the cold she tried to ward off. One night, as the wind howled outside, Maria watched the small flames in the newly built pit, warming the environment. The light danced on the metal walls, and an idea, once a distant whisper, solidified in her mind. What if she didn't sell the jewels in a conventional way? What if the value of that treasure could transcend mere subsistence, reaching others who, like her, faced indifference and helplessness? The empire of hope that the silo promised could be an empire of altruism. She recalled her husband's conversations, a man of good heart and vision, about neighboring farmers who had contacts in larger cities, trusted people who could mediate discreet deals. It wouldn't be easy. It would require a dangerous journey, trust in strangers, and the courage to expose part of her secret. But the idea of transforming that forgotten treasure into a force for good, of reaching out to others in need, lit an even stronger flame in her chest. Poetic justice, she thought, could have a much broader reach than just her small family. In that cold dawn, Maria made a decision. First, the silo needed to be an unquestionable home, a safe and warm refuge. She needed more supplies, a solid base before embarking on any journey. But then, yes, then she would seek out her husband's contacts. With her heart full of a new and audacious hope, she nestled among her children, listening to the rhythm of their breaths, and felt that destiny at last was on her side. Maria woke with the first ray of sun that dared to peek through the silo's crevices, bringing with it not the biting cold of before, but a faint promise of a new day. The decision made at dawn hovered in her mind, a mix of audacity and hope. She felt lighter, as if the weight of despair had been replaced by the equally heavy but much sweeter burden of responsibility and vision. Pedro and Ana still slept deeply, nestled under the blankets, their serene faces contrasting with the storm that Maria's life had been. With maternal care, she got up, trying not to wake them. The silo, once a maze of metal and echo, was taking on the air of a home. The improvised partitions, made with pieces of tarp, offered an illusion of privacy. The fire pit, still with warm embers, exuded a welcoming warmth that kept the most intense cold at bay. Maria lit the fire again, watching the flames dance, a mirror of her own soul, which now burned with renewed purpose. She prepared a simple coffee, its bitter and comforting smell filling the space. As her children woke, Maria served them bread and water, her eyes fixed on them, imagining the future that treasure, still hidden, could provide them. Not just comfort, but dignity, education, the chance to be whoever they wanted to be. The idea of using the fortune to help others, as her husband had always dreamed, pulsed in her heart. But how? The town was a nest of gossip and distrust. She needed a link, a discreet channel, someone who could understand her story without judgment. Her husband's contacts. That was the only way. That day, Maria dedicated herself to strengthening the silo. With the new shovel, she dug a small drain around the base to divert melted snow water, preventing moisture from penetrating. Pedro, with the energy of his 6 years, helped carry stones, while Ana, 4, watched everything with curiosity, imitating her mother's movements with a branch. With each nail hammered, each board fixed, the silo gained more solidity, more soul. Maria felt she was building not just a shelter, but a legacy. The sun was already beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, when an unexpected sound broke the quiet of the evening. A creak of wheels in the snow, followed by a familiar cough. Maria froze, her heart pounding. Who could it be? No one came to the silo except to mock or ignore. She grabbed Pedro and Ana, pulling them close. Her protective instinct sharpened. The improvised door, made of old boards, creaked, and a tall, corpulent silhouette filled the opening. It was Mr. Joachim, an old neighboring farmer, a longtime friend of her late husband, a man of few words but with an immense heart. He held a bundle in his hands and a sad smile on his lips. "Maria, my dear," he said, his voice hoarse, but laden with affection. I heard you were around. I brought some things for you all." He extended the bundle, revealing warm, homemade bread and a jar of honey. "Your husband, he asked me to look after you and the children should anything happen. He always planned ahead." Maria felt tears well up in her eyes. Mr. Joachim, the missing link, the messenger from the past. He had not come to judge, but to fulfill a promise. He was the bridge she needed. Their eyes met, and Maria saw there not only compassion, but an unwavering loyalty. The turning point was not an obstacle, but an outstretched hand, a gift of destiny, coming from the most unexpected place and the purest heart. The path to the Empire of Hope had just opened in a way she had never imagined. Maria couldn't hold back a sob. Mr. Joachim's words, coming from the depths of an old friendship and a promise kept, disarmed all her defenses. She extended her trembling hands for the bread and honey, feeling the warmth of the freshly baked food. Pedro and Ana, previously tense beside their mother, now looked at the old farmer with childlike curiosity, attracted by the sweet smell of honey. Mr. Joachim, seeing Maria's emotion, simply nodded, his blue eyes, wrinkled by time and sun, conveying a deep calm. "Come in, Mr. Joachim," Maria managed to say, her voice choked. "Please." He entered, and the cold outside seemed to lessen a bit with his warm presence. The farmer observed the interior of the silo, his eyes scanning the improvised partitions, the sleeping platform, the still smoldering fire pit. A slight smile of approval appeared on his lips. "I see you're doing a good job here, Maria. Your husband would be proud." The mention of her husband brought a lump to Maria's throat, but also a renewed strength. She sat on the floor, pulling her children close, while Mr. Joachim settled on a wooden stump Maria used as a bench. The silence that followed was not awkward, but filled with mutual understanding. He always worried a lot about us," Maria began, her voice firmer now. "And I didn't know who to turn to." Mr. Joachim took a piece of bread, offering it to Pedro, who accepted it with a timid smile. "Your husband was a good man, Maria, and foresighted. He knew life could be hard. Before he left, he asked me to keep an eye on you and the children. He said that if you ever needed help, I should be the first to know." He paused, looking at Maria seriously. "And I should have come sooner." Maria shook her head. "No, Mr. Joachim, it's not your fault. I isolated myself. The shame of the eviction, people's stares, made me want to hide." The farmer sighed, a heavy sound. "The town is small, Maria. Tongues are sharp, but not everyone is bad. Some just don't understand. And others, well, others are like me, who care." He looked at the bundle he had brought. "I also brought some warm clothes for the children, and some dry firewood. Winter promises to be harsh this year." Maria felt a wave of gratitude so intense she could barely speak. That man was not just offering material help, he was offering moral support, a connection to the outside world she had cut off. "Mr. Joachim," Maria said, her voice almost a whisper, I have something to tell you, something that could change everything." She hesitated, her eyes fixed on his. Revealing the treasure was a risk, but the trust he inspired was undeniable. She needed advice, a sensible mind to help her navigate that new and dangerous sea of possibilities. "At the bottom of the silo," she continued, her voice lower, "I found a box full of jewels and gold." Mr. Joachim blinked, his eyes widening slightly, but he expressed no shock or greed, only a contained surprise. He watched her, waiting for her to continue. "It's a fortune, Mr. Joachim, more than I ever imagined, and I want to use it, not just for us, to give Pedro and Ana a future, but to help others, to build something your husband would be proud of." The farmer remained silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the flames of the fire pit. Finally, he looked up at Maria, a different glint in his eyes. "I always knew you were a woman of metal, Maria. Your husband knew it too. And this idea of helping others, that's just like him. He always dreamed of making a difference." He leaned forward, his voice lower. "I have contacts, Maria, in larger cities. Trusted people who can help transform this treasure into something solid without raising suspicions here. It won't be easy, but it's possible." Maria felt her heart pulse with a new and powerful hope. That was the link, the bridge she needed. The silo, once a refuge of despair, now became the starting point for an empire of hope and altruism, guided by the friendly hand of a loyal man and the memory of a love that transcended death. The snow outside continued to fall, but inside the silo, the flame of hope burned brighter than ever. Maria felt a warmth in her chest, more intense than the fire. Mr. Joachim's words were a balm for her soul. He did not judge her, but simply offered a firm and loyal hand. "Contacts in larger cities, trusted people," she repeated, her voice full of hope. "Mr. Joachim, I don't know how to thank you." The old farmer smiled. "You don't need to, Maria. It's what your husband would do. It's what's right." He looked at Pedro and Anna, who were playing. "We need to be careful. A fortune attracts people. Discretion would be our greatest ally." Maria nodded. "Selling jewels here would be impossible. My idea isn't just for us. I want this treasure to help others, the forgotten, to build something that offers hope, a refuge, an empire of altruism, as I call it." Mr. Joachim observed her with admiration. "An empire of altruism. It's what your husband would dream of. He had a big heart." He cleared his throat. "I have a cousin in another city, a businessman with unwavering character and discreet. He could help us transform pieces into resources without raising suspicions." The idea of a long and dangerous journey in winter made Maria hesitate. But the image of Pedro and Anna and the vision of a better future propelled her. "And how would we get there, Mr. Joachim, with the snow falling like this?" "Don't worry about that now, Maria," he replied. "First, we need to plan. Choose the right pieces, the ones that raise the least suspicion, and you need to be safe here. The silo, with improvements, is a good start, but winter will still get worse." In the following days, Mr. Joachim became a pillar. He brought supplies discreetly, firewood, food, tools. With his help, Maria and the children transformed the silo. He showed them how to reinforce walls, seal crevices with mud and straw. The fire pit was improved with an improvised chimney, making the environment safe and welcoming. The silo, once cold and desolate, was now a cozy refuge. The metal walls retained the heat. The outer snow acted as a natural insulator, muffling the wind's howls and creating peace and security. Pedro and Anna, protected and happy, played freely, their laughter echoing. Maria, seeing them, felt gratitude overflow. The treasure, still hidden, was the seed of a greater purpose. The conversation with Mr. Joachim had planted a new seed. The poetic justice of the silo would extend to nourish the hope of many. The path would be long and challenging, but with a loyal ally, Maria felt ready. The decision to leave was made on a cold night, under the flickering light of the fire. Maria and Mr. Joachim debated every detail. The farmer explained that his cousin, a man named Gabriel, lived in a larger city. A 2 days' journey by wagon, if the weather permitted. "We can't go with an open wagon, Maria. The snow is deep and the cold is biting. I have a covered wagon, older but safe, and we'll leave before dawn, to avoid curious glances." Maria felt a tightness in her chest at the thought of leaving Pedro and Anna, even if only for a few days. Her eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. "Who will take care of them, Mr. Joachim?" Her voice was a whisper of concern. The farmer placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "My wife, Dona Clara, will come stay with them. She loves children and is as discreet as anyone." I haven't told her about the treasure, only that you need to resolve some urgent matters in the city." Maria nodded, the confidence in Mr. Joachim's voice calming her heart. In the days that followed, she prepared her children for her absence, explaining that she would need to make a small trip to bring good things for them. Pedro, with his childlike seriousness, hugged her tightly, while Anna, clingy, whimpered a little, but soon got distracted by the promise of playing with Donna Clara. Maria carefully chose 3 pieces from the treasure: a small pearl necklace, a pair of emerald earrings, and a discreet ruby ring. They were beautiful, but not as ostentatious as the larger pieces, reducing the risk of attracting attention. She wrapped them in a piece of cloth, hiding them at the bottom of her travel bag. At the dawn of departure, the cold was intense, and snow fell in dense flakes. Donna Clara, a petite woman with a gentle smile, was already in the silo, warming porridge for the children. Maria hugged Pedro and Anna with all her strength, kissing their soft hair. "Mommy will be back soon, my loves. Be good with Grandma Clara." The children, sleepy, waved. Maria felt a pang of pain as she pulled away. But the image of the empire of altruism she dreamed of building propelled her forward. Mr. Joachim's covered wagon waited outside, almost invisible under the white blanket of snow. Maria climbed in, nestling under the blankets the farmer had provided. The creak of the wheels in the snow was the only sound that broke the silence of the dawn. The silo, her refuge and the cradle of her new hope, disappeared quickly into the darkness and blizzard. Maria looked back one last time, feeling the icy wind on her face, but her heart burned with unwavering determination. The path ahead was uncertain and dangerous, but she was no longer alone. The seed of hope planted in the silo was ready to germinate on a much larger ground. The journey began with a slow rhythm, Mr. Joachim's wagon cutting through the virgin snow, which accumulated in drifts on the edges of the improvised road. The icy air penetrated the crevices of the tarp that covered the wagon, but the thick blankets and the shared warmth between Maria and the old farmer offered a precarious refuge. Maria observed the white and desolate landscape, each snow-covered tree looking like a silent ghost, a reminder of the vastness and indifference of the world outside. Her heart was divided between the anxiety of the mission and the poignant longing for her children, Pedro and Anna, whom she had left under the gentle care of Donna Clara. She clasped her hands, feeling the rough texture of the fabric that wrapped the jewels. The weight of those pieces was not just material. It was the weight of an uncertain future, but also that of a grand promise. Mr. Joachim, with the firm reins in his gloved hands, noticed Maria's thoughtful silence. His blue eyes, wrinkled by time, cast a look of understanding. "Worried, my dear?" he asked, his voice hoarse but laden with a soul-warming kindness. Maria sighed, turning to him, a slight tremor in her lips. "About them, Mr. Joachim, about Pedro and Anna, and about what awaits us. It's a world so different from what I know, so full of uncertainties." The farmer nodded, a slow and thoughtful movement. "It's true, but the courage you've shown so far, Maria, is greater than any fear, and they'll be fine with Clara. She's like a grandmother to them, and the silo. Well, the silo is now a safe home, more than many others." The wagons swayed gently, the monotonous and muffled sound of the wheels in the snow, creating a strange melody that lulled Maria's thoughts. She thought of the nights in the silo, the comforting warmth of the fire pit, the innocent laughter of her children that echoed in the metal walls. That place, once a symbol of her misfortune and helplessness, had become the cradle of her resilience, a testament to her unwavering strength. And now she was leaving to extend that resilience to others, to transform the poetic justice that had reached her into something greater. The empire of altruism was not just a vague idea. It was a pressing need, a response to the indifference and prejudice she herself had faced so cruelly. Throughout the day, They stopped only for a quick roadside snack, bread and cheese that Mr. Joachim had brought, accompanied by hot tea in a thermos. The cold was relentless, and Maria felt her bones ache, but the determination that burned in her chest kept her warm inside. She remembered her husband's words, a man of vision and good heart, about the importance of helping others, of building bridges where others saw only insurmountable walls. That treasure, she knew, was not to accumulate wealth for herself, but to transform lives, to sow hope. In the late afternoon, the snow began to subside, and the sky, once grey and oppressive, opened up in shades of purple and orange, painting the horizon with a melancholic beauty. The silhouette of a small village appeared on the horizon, its twinkling lights promising a brief rest. "We'll spend the night here, Maria," Mr. Joachim said, pointing to the distant lights with a tired gesture. "It's a simple place, but safe. Early tomorrow, we'll continue. Gabriel's city is not far. We'll arrive before nightfall." Maria felt a mix of relief and renewed apprehension. Each step was a step closer to her goal, but also a step into the unknown, into a world of business and decisions she had never imagined facing. She looked at the jewels in her bag, feeling the cold, promising gleam through the fabric. That treasure, discovered in the darkness and abandonment of the silo, was about to see the light of day, not for her own selfish benefit, but to illuminate the lives of many who, like her, had been forgotten. The journey was a test of faith, a path to justice that transcended the personal, an echo of her husband's love and vision that guided her. She took a deep breath, the icy air filling her lungs, ready for whatever came. Hope, like the wagon, advanced, step by step, through the snow, towards a future she was determined to shape. Mr. Joachim's wagon entered the small village, the lights of the main inn inviting them with a warm glow. The smell of burning firewood and homemade food hung in the air, a welcoming contrast to the biting cold. Maria dismounted, feeling her body stiff, but the relief was immense. They found a discreet corner, enjoying hearty soup and fresh bread by the crackling fireplace. Maria allowed herself a brief moment of peace, the heat penetrating her bones, a pause before the big step. The next morning, before the sun even peeked out, they were back in the wagon. The snow had stopped, and the pale blue sky promised a clearer day. Gabriel's city was just a few hours away. Maria felt her heart beat faster with every kilometer. It was the moment of truth. By noon, the first buildings of the city appeared. The rural silence soon gave way to the bustle of a busy life. Wagons, hurried people, various odors. The city, a tangle of narrow streets and tall buildings, was infinitely more complex than the silo. Maria felt a mix of fascination and intimidation. Mr. Joachim skillfully maneuvered the wagon to a dark brick building with a discreet sign. Gabriel, Trade and Investments. Maria felt a chill in her stomach. It was now. They were received by Gabriel, a middle-aged man with a serious face and keen eyes, similar to Mr. Joachim's, but with a different intensity. He extended his hand to Maria with a firm grip. "My cousin Maria, Mr. Joachim spoke highly of you." His voice was calm and professional. In the sober office, Maria sat down, the bundle of jewels weighing in her hands. Mr. Joachim briefly explained the situation, focusing on Maria's need for a new beginning. Gabriel listened attentively, without interrupting, his eyes fixed on Maria. "So, you brought some pieces for appraisal, correct?" he asked, his voice emotionless. Maria nodded, her hands trembling as she unwrapped the cloth. The pearls, emeralds, and the ruby gleamed under the dim light. Gabriel took a magnifying glass and began to examine them meticulously, his experienced fingers turning each piece. The silence in the office was thick, filled only by the ticking of an old clock. Maria observed Gabriel's face, trying to decipher his thoughts. He was a sphinx. This was the crucial moment. The treasure, her redemption and her children's future, was in the hands of a stranger. Trust was a leap in the dark. Finally, Gabriel lowered the magnifying glass, his eyes meeting Maria's. A slight smile, almost imperceptible, appeared on his lips. "Maria," he began, his voice a little softer, "Mr. Joachim didn't tell me the extent of your inheritance. These pieces are of exceptional quality, and the value is considerable, very considerable." Maria felt a mix of relief and dizziness. The climax was not a shout, but the silent confirmation that the impossible was becoming real. That was the first concrete step towards the empire of altruism, a future of dignity and hope. With the magnitude of the treasure came also the responsibility and the risks. She took a deep breath, ready for whatever came. Maria took a deep breath, the icy air filling her lungs, ready for whatever came. Gabriel, with a gaze that seemed to probe her soul, nodded slowly. "Well done, Maria. The responsibility is great, but the opportunity is even greater. Mr. Joachim told me about your vision, your empire of altruism. It's a noble idea, and I believe we can make it a reality." He leaned back in his chair, fingers intertwined. "The first step is discretion. We cannot sell all the pieces at once, nor in the same city. That would raise suspicions and attract the wrong kind of attention. My suggestion is that we start with these 3 pieces. I will take them to different markets, in distant cities, where the origin will not be questioned. The process will be slow, but safe." Maria listened attentively, every word of Gabriel's tracing a map for the future. She felt a pang of anxiety at the complexity, but the firmness in his tone conveyed security. "And the value, Gabriel? How will we use it?" she asked, her voice more confident now. "With wisdom, Maria," he replied, a gleam in his eyes. "Initially, we will invest in something solid and secure that generates income. Think of lands, properties that can be rented, or even a small business that serves the community. Something that doesn't immediately attract attention, but that starts building the foundation for your empire." He paused, looking at Mr. Joachim, who nodded in agreement. "Then, when we have a stable flow of resources, we can start thinking about larger projects. A shelter for mothers and children, perhaps. A support center for the helpless. Something that echoes your own journey." Maria felt tears well up in her eyes, but she held them back. The vision she had nurtured in her heart, there in the cold of the silo, was taking shape in Gabriel's words. The poetic justice of the silo would not be just for her and her children, but for many others. "That's exactly what I want, Gabriel," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "A place where no one else needs to feel what I felt. A place of hope." Mr. Joachim, who had remained silent, placed a hand on Maria's shoulder. "Your husband would be proud, Maria, very proud." Gabriel took the jewels, wrapping them again carefully. "Leave them with me. It will take a few weeks, perhaps a month, for me to return with the first news and the first funds. Meanwhile, you and Mr. Joachim can start thinking about the details of what you want to build, where, how, for whom." He smiled, a genuine smile this time. "Don't worry about the risks. I will take care of everything with the same discretion and integrity that my cousin taught me." Maria felt a huge weight lifted from her shoulders. The uncertainty of the path had transformed into a concrete plan, guided by experienced hands and loyal hearts. She stood up, feeling a renewed energy. "Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Mr. Joachim. I don't know how to express my gratitude." Your gratitude will be the lives you transform, Maria," Gabriel replied. "That is enough." They said goodbye, and Maria and Mr. Joachim returned to the wagon. The afternoon sun painted the city with golden hues, and Maria looked at the horizon, no longer with apprehension, but with a vibrant hope. The journey back to the silo would be different. She was not returning just with the promise of a future, but with the first concrete steps of a legacy. Pedro and Ana, her safe haven, would now have a world of possibilities. The silo, once a forced shelter, had become the epicenter of a silent revolution of kindness. The resolution was not the end of the struggle, but the glorious beginning of her true mission. The journey back to the silo was marked by a different silence, not of apprehension, but of a deep hope. Maria and Mr. Joachim exchanged glances, each aware of the magnitude of the step they had taken. The snowy landscape, once oppressive, now seemed a protective mantle over the world they were about to transform. The cold was still biting, but the warmth in Maria's chest was stronger. She thought of Pedro and Ana, imagining their smiles upon her return, and how their future, once so uncertain, now unfolded with vibrant colors. Upon spotting the silo, Maria felt a lump in her throat. That metal structure, which once represented rock bottom, was now the cradle of a dream. Donna Clara awaited them at the entrance, a welcoming smile on her face. Pedro and Ana ran to Maria, their small arms wrapping her in a tight embrace. The tears she had held back during the journey finally flowed, but they were tears of joy and gratitude. The silo was warm, the smell of homemade food hung in the air, and the laughter of her children was the most beautiful melody. That was indeed a home. The weeks that followed were filled with anxious waiting and meticulous planning. Gabriel, true to his word, sent a discreet letter confirming the sale of the first pieces of the treasure. The value was even greater than Maria expected. With the first funds in hand, Maria and Mr. Joachim sat for hours, tracing the first outlines of the Empire of Altruism. The initial idea was simple but powerful: a small shelter for destitute mothers and children, a place where no one else needed to feel the cold and loneliness Maria had known. With the help of Mr. Joachim, who mobilized some trusted friends in the village, Maria acquired a plot of land on the outskirts, away from curious eyes, but accessible. Construction began modestly, with simple materials, but with the solidity of an unwavering purpose. Maria supervised every detail, her hands, once calloused by the struggle for survival, now shaping her dream brick by brick. Pedro and Ana, curious, observed the work, without understanding the dimension of what was being born, but feeling their mother's joy and determination. Months turned into years. The small shelter flourished, becoming a safe haven for dozens of families. Maria's empire of altruism was not made of gold and jewels, but of smiles, hugs, and second chances. Gabriel continued to manage the treasure wisely, ensuring that the proceeds sustained and expanded the work. Maria, once the scorned widow, was now a respected and loved figure, her story of overcoming inspiring everyone. The silo, her first home and the site of the discovery, was preserved, transformed into a memorial of hope, a reminder that even in desolation, light can emerge. Pedro and Ana grew up strong and happy, their hearts full of the values their mother had taught them. They became pillars of the empire, dedicating their lives to helping others. Maria, sitting by the silo on a spring afternoon, watched the sunset paint the horizon. The gentle wind brought the echo of children's laughter from the shelter. She had transformed pain into purpose, misery into dignity, and indifference into human connection. The silo, once a monument to failure, was now the pulsating heart of a legacy of love and hope, an eternal testament to poetic justice that finally had prevailed. Maria, with silver hair and a face marked by smiles and wisdom, still found her peace by the silo. It was no longer the cold and desolate structure, but a living monument, its metal walls gleaming under the sun, a beacon of hope for the surrounding community. The echo of children's laughter, now more numerous and vibrant, reached her from the Maria Welcome Center, majestic a few meters away, a testament to her unwavering purpose. Pedro, strong and gentle, with his mother's expressive eyes, approached, bringing a cup of herbal tea. He sat beside her, the comfortable silence filled by the melody of life Maria had sown. "The new families are adapting well, Mother," he said, his voice calm. "Little Sophia, who arrived yesterday, is already playing with Anna. She found a home." Maria smiled, a gleam in her eyes that time had not extinguished. "Every smile is a victory, my son. Every soul welcomed, proof that kindness can change the world." She held Pedro's hand, feeling the strength and dedication he had inherited. Pedro and Anna, now adults, were the pillars of the empire of altruism, dedicating themselves with the same passion infused into every brick, every hug. Anna, with contagious energy and a huge heart, managed the center's education, ensuring every child received shelter, knowledge, and affection. The silo, in its essence, remained untouched, but its interior had been transformed into a museum of resilience, telling the story of Maria and her children. Old photographs, rudimentary tools used to clean the place, and a replica of the rusty treasure box were displayed. Visitors from afar came to hear the story. Touch the walls that witness the turning point of destiny. Feel the energy of overcoming. Mr. Joachim, already elderly but with a vivid spirit, made regular visits, sitting with Maria to reminisce about the early days, his eyes welling up with pride. Gabriel, Mr. Joachim's cousin, continued to manage the investments with discretion and mastery, ensuring a constant flow of resources, allowing the center's growth and adaptation to community needs. The empire of altruism had expanded beyond the shelter, including vocational training for youth and a food bank that served the entire region. Maria watched the sunset, painting the sky in gold and violet. The spring breeze caressed her face, bringing the scent of flowers and the promise of new beginnings. She thought of her husband, whose memory was a guiding star. He would have been proud, not of the fortune, but of the legacy of love and justice she had built. Life, she knew, was a cycle of challenges, rewards, losses, and rebirths. The silo, once a symbol of her misery, was now the anchor of her greatest joy, a reminder that true wealth was not in gold or jewels, but in the ability to transform pain into hope, to reach out to others, to build bridges where there were once abysses. Poetic justice was not a single event, but a continuous current of kindness, flowing through generations, a river of compassion that would never dry up. Maria then closed her eyes, feeling the fullness of a heart that had found its true home, not in a physical structure, but in love dedicated to the world.